Alright, and here we go. So after you cut the pieces, granted I cut them a little bit too close. That's because I slipped in it. Really hard to cut with this thing. Here you go, there's a decent example of it. A little bit further than that, but that, you know, the gist of it. Alright, in first order of business, I'm going to put these together because when sanding, it is, you know, it's very easy to sand too much and then you kind of get like those little dips between surfaces, which is especially annoying when you're doing seam line removal. So, just for this guide, these two pieces will be together. Now, I have this little sticky note. You can give it a read if you like. All it is just that it outlines the steps here. So first, we're going to start with 600 paper. Then, or you can either do 600 and then 800, that's just to smooth it down, help get rid of more of the stress mark. Then 1200 display. Then, what I really do recommend, if you can find another solution, good for you, but gray balancers, these things are fantastic. Absolutely amazing. They can be expensive because of their shipping costs, but a quarter, one of these, like just a single side of a half, will last you like at least, very least, 1 to 2 kits. If you, use it correctly, which I will get into later. Very much recommend these, like $2 a pop. So you're spending... Dang, I'm stupid. So if you're getting 8 kits out of it, that's 16 bucks for 8 kits. $2 a kit, that's amazing. I probably did that. Alright, hold on, cut that up. Yeah, a little bit expensive, but I think they're worth it. $2 a pop. You can get like 4 to 8 kits out of it. I think that's pretty good. Then we're gonna do some little magic here that I'll explain later, using your finger and a wet microfiber. Then melamine, Mr. Clean Sponge, and then another microfiber and finish. So let's get into that right. But hold on, I think I have to get the Bandai shipment. Damn, it didn't come just yet. Where was I? Oh yeah. So, we're gonna start with our 600, and I'll just say this now, and I'll explain it more later. Sand in one direction, don't go back and forth, don't do circles. I'll explain this more later, but sand like this, and yeah, that's what I'll be doing. It'd probably be better to use a sponge on this actually for, curved surfaces. And since it's far away from the piece, I can go back and forth. I was just talking about it there. Oh, okay, never mind. Once you start to get closer to the surface, you should start going only in one direction. So here's the result. You got 3 surfaces here that are sanded, and I'll be, showing the intermediate between each step. All right, next step, we're gonna go for the 800 since we started with 600. Or you could go to 12,000, but we're doing it slow but steady in the same direction as the previous one. The main point of this is just to help get rid of the stress mark. If it's a flat surface, help flatten it. And you want to keep going until you sand it fully. You don't want to sand it for 2 seconds. My tip is sand slight angle, and what that does, or after you sand for a little bit, what that does is allows you to see, oh, are there any more of the previous scratches? Because the previous scratches would have been, this way. But if you sand like this, and you only see scratches in this way, that means, yep, you fully sanded the piece enough to the next grit. And yes, I know I'll have to resand this once I do seam line removal. Just let me have fun. And this is what that looks like. This side. And this side. Alright, next up, we're going to go for our 1,200 paper from this bag. Previous two from Madwork, just for reference. We're going to be very light, especially as we get to higher grits. You're going to be very light because it does take a bit longer the higher grit you go to get to the next, get the surface to the complete next grit. However, if you go faster, it'll kind of, defeat the point, or if you press harder. But again, I will explain that later. Alright, now that's done. And as per usual, we get our little zoom in shot. You can see that this little beam of light right here is getting more consistent across the surface. Right, and next up, we are going to take this gray balancer and just go at it. Again, not too hard. the gray bounce is actually pretty quick, especially from this 1200 spay. Again, lighter grits do not go too hard. And also, I might as well, while I'm doing this, explain this little beam of light thing. So there's, as a lot of you probably know, there's different finishes. There's matte, semi-matte, semi-gloss, gloss, high gloss, candy coat, metallic, right? What the original plastic is for like 90% of the kit, that is in something called eggshell, which is very slightly less matte than semi-gloss. As you can see, if it was semi-gloss, it would have more of a definite, show better on this surface, more of a definite ring of light. But with eggshell, the whole thing kind of lights up. Or at least that's how I would describe it in this context. Painting nerds get mad at me. Our interior designer. And what we want to aim for is as close to eggshell as possible. If it's semi-gloss, you will see the difference. It is not a very noticeable difference, but if you know what you're looking for, there is a difference. And it's actually more difficult to get a nice out-of-box matte than it is to get a nice out-of-box gloss. Because you can polish and polish and polish away to get gloss, but for matte, you can't go too high in grit, or else it'll be too glossy. So, therefore, we're going to do some things in the next step to help circumvent that. Right, and now, you see pretty much all the scratches are gone. They're still, slightly there, but a lot less noticeable. Alright, now this is where it kind of gets weird for a few people. Before, again I'll explain this later, we were standing only in one direction. Now we're going to do two things that are weird. First, we're going to do something perpendicularly. So if we're going this way, we're going to do it this way. And also, you're going to do it with your finger. I don't know exactly why this works. I don't even know if it works, but I do it and I get a good result. So you just want to wipe with your finger, and there's not going to be really any much difference. It might be a little bit glossier, might be a little bit clearer, as you might be able to see right here. But at the end of the day, I don't really know why this works. I just know my method does. So, wow. Next, we're going to do something not a lot of people have actually realized is the thing. You're going to take a microfiber cloth. I usually like to cut them up into small bits. You're going to dip it in water, right? Squeeze it out, not sopping wet, because, you don't need it to be that wet. And a crazy thing happens here. You get a wet microfiber cloth. I know, groundbreaking. And what we're going to do with that is like we did with the finger. We were going this way, now we're going this way. We're going to go perpendicularly again. So, same direction as the finger. Let me do it like this to better show. Just going to wipe with this wet microfiber. What it should do is help clean out any dust or gunk that's still left over there. Yeah, not super necessary, but I just like to do it. And then you can always take another microfiber and just right off. Just make sure it's not too full of dust, or else it kind of beats the point, right? And now, next part, melamine sponges. Now, a word of caution, be very, very light with these. They're not like other sponges or other sanding stuff where it kicks up only dust. If you sand even like moderately firmly with it, it'll like rip out pieces of itself and it'll become all porous, which one makes it so it's less effective at what it's supposed to do, and two, it flies up in the air, and if it gets in your eyes, it's not exactly fun. It's not like world-ending pain, but it does hurt more than dust. So, word of caution. Also, while you're sanding, another word of caution, wear a mask, like even a cloth, fabric, whatever type of mask, just so, less dust gets into your lungs is the preferable option here. Now, remember, we went this way, and then we went perpendicularly. Now we're going back in the original direction. And very lightly with the sponge, just in one direction. And these melamine sponges, Mr. Clean sponges, magic erasers, they're all the same thing. Just try not to get the Mr. Clean ones with the soap in them, because then it's kind of annoying. And also do not wet sand with these, because they just, it just doesn't work. Let me use this side so I can get in here better. Again, we're being very light. You might be able to hear it, but that's just because of the type of surface this thing has. Right, And then you can see there's a, we can compare it to this, right over here. Here at the end, more glossy, it's like very defined, like even more, this beam of light is in higher resolution than over here. But back here, back to a lower resolution. Lower than this actually, a lower shine. I wonder what that could mean. That is a spoiler alert. Also, yes, I know this surface will be covered. I'm just doing a flat surface for demonstration. This is at the very end of the kit. Like, these are the only pieces that I have that I can actually demonstrate on without busting out a whole new one. And I severely doubt my camera will pick this up. I give it a good old college try here. But you might be able to see these scratches are diagonal to the forward. That's a way of testing to see if it worked. And also you can see the surface is pretty dang smooth. Here's the original, here's the sanded. It looks pretty good already, so you may be thinking, oh, what's the big whoop? Well, more noticeable in person, I'm gonna be honest. When you kind of look at it, the way the light catches it, it's hard to explain unless you've seen it yourself. But there are things we can do to make it, while not a lot, slightly better. And that comes into our next step. If you want a lower gloss, again, we were going this way originally, then we went perpendicular, back again this way. We're going to go perpendicular with the melamine sponge. And as you do it, pay attention, be able to see, what's that? It gets glossier. But hey, isn't this supposed to make it more matte? Doesn't that defeat the purpose? Well, you got to keep sanding, and then the gloss will go back down. See? It's already going back down. It probably didn't show up on the camera at all, and I just look crazy. Oh, Sophia, put in a counter for how many times I drop shit because of my freaking finger. My god. And this may take a while, but again, name of the game is getting a good finish and also scratch removal as well. When you do it perpendicularly, you're probably still going to see some very, very, very fine micro scratches in the original direction. That's fine, really. It's insanely hard to notice. But anyone's feel, free to add to this method if they so choose. Right, now finally done with that. Alright, and look at that. Here's the original. There's the sanded. Yes, there is a little bit of a mark, I think something skidded against it, but really all you have to do is just... And then you're back to normal, right? Pretty good in my opinion. Slightly less glossy, which, will stick out, but we're gonna do one last step in order to fix that. Be slightly glossier here, because I didn't do it enough on this. As you can see, slightly less glossy. Again, it's really hard to tell in the camera. Alright, and last but not least, we have a microfiber. Now, I keep it like this just because it's, a clean one specifically meant for doing that. You know how we went one direction, perpendicular, one direction, back in the original direction. Very, very, very as lightly as you physically, humanly possibly can, wipe with this microfiber. And I'm even gonna brace myself on this little clamp here. You're only gonna need no more than, I'd say, like 7 to 10 passes. You really are only doing it until you get the result you like. Which is really, you can just use the rest of the plastic to mask. See, we have this, this, might need 1, 2 more. This one is gonna have a lot of scratches because it's kind of hard to get in there, especially with my finger, but we'll analyze the final result. This is like the 3rd time I'm trying to film this video. I was a bit rough on that one because I don't really care. I'll actually show you what happens if you do it too rough. I was a bit too rough on the thing here, but I think it's pretty good. Right, time for a final result. Take a look at that. Here we have the normal. There's the sanded. Now again, it's kind of hard for me to do with this finger. I wish I could do it very, slightly better, but, you know, it takes a lot of practice, and I'm out of practice. But you can see how the same amount of shine and the same shape of it pretty well translated over that surface. Yes, it's a bit scratchy. Again, really difficult for me. Then we're going to take a look at this surface, which you can immediately tell is more scratchy. And then this one, which I was too rough with the microfiber on, very hard to tell on this tiny surface, but you can see as I move the light, you can kind of see the light move across it. But on a flat piece like over here, it's just all at once, right? But on this little, and it doesn't do with this little bit. You can contrast them. See? This is full, this is only half. Hard to tell the difference, but once you know what you're looking for, you'll be able to find it. As you can see, very, very, very small scratches. I could have done this a bit better, to be honest. And you see here's the normal surface. Then here, I didn't sand his transition well after the 1200 grit. Then back to normal. And over here, it's really good. As I did this entire underside here. Also keep in mind, this is a over 10 times zoom on a 4K camera. So overall, I think it's pretty good. And that's about it. That's really all there is for out-of-box sanding. I hope you enjoyed it all. I'm actually, stick around because I'm going to do a little information session on very, very important info. Again, people have told me that it changes the entire game. So, you know, that'll be right there. Alright, now next section, we're going to start chunking through this little list here. Tools. What did I use? So I just have these acrylic boards from MadWorks for like a few bucks. You can literally use popsicle sticks, it really doesn't matter. As long as it's flat and straight. MadWorks 600 and 800 sandpaper. This is for, you know, flat surfaces general use. And then you have the MadWorks 600, 800 sponge. These are going to be for your curved surfaces or slopes. You don't want to be sanding a flat surface into a curved piece, especially if it's lower grit, right? Then we have the, and this is looking a bit worse for I know, because I was just kind of hamming on it. But this is the Display 1200. You can get it with a pack from like, I think 1,000 to 2,500 for like 13 bucks, and they have like a bunch of pieces each. It's fantastic. And then I just, you know, it's adhesive sandpaper, so I just popped it on a sponge here, and that's my sponge version of the 1200. Then gray balancers. Again, they say this is effective 2000 grit, but I just think that's a lie. It has insane scratch removal. I don't know why. It just does. Very much recommend it. You don't want to pay for the huge shipping you can always get from US or otherwise based stores. And then Mr. Clean Magic Eraser. This will give you matte finishes on your piece. Just need to be careful how you use it. So, nub removal, stress mark removal, getting the surface ready for a smooth transition, scratch removal, matte, cleaning, and very, very slight polish. That's really it. And then I'll talk about what this brush is for in a second. Some budget options. These are the budget options. Well, including that. These are the budget options. You can pick them up for like all of this for less than 20 bucks, I would assume. It's fantastic and it'll last you forever. So I really do recommend it. And on that note, I should also say, don't worry about getting expensive tools. You don't need shit like this. All this does is speeds it up. This is this is pretty good. But otherwise, all it does is speed it up, right? And I have a little saying, the builder makes the tool. The tools do not make the builder. You can have super expensive stuff and still be shit at building Gunpla. Or you can, you know, have, you know, some slightly cheaper stuff and make fantastic custom. It's really about how much you know, how deep your knowledge is, muscle memory, and your also willingness to learn. I'll talk about, you know, some of those deep knowledge points right after this. So, first game-changing tip, dust. So, you may think, oh, I can just go ham with sandpaper and it, whatever, and then it'll wear out. or I can do wet sanding, and that'll make it so it won't scratch the piece as much. Those are wrong for a few reasons. What happens when you sand is that the surface kind of cuts into plastic, right? And it digs it up, and it pulls up, all the dust. When you sand back and forth, it rolls the dust around and digs it into the piece. So it can almost be ignored with lower grit, but especially with higher grit, if you have those little pieces rolling around, and then you go into an even higher grit, those gouges will not come out. So there's a few things that you can do to solve that. First, between, pieces, surfaces, all that, take a brush. This is the gum primer dust brush, or you can just use a paintbrush. And you can see there's some dust here. All you got to do, clean it up, and then most of it's gone. Again, this is kind of caked on here, but you get the point. That will make your life billions of times easier. The second game-changing tip, I talked about it earlier. When sanding, you only want to go in one direction. You may be thinking, why? Well, it makes it so the dust doesn't roll around. If you go in circles, you're kind of spiraling and drilling it in. If you go back and forth, you're rolling it in, the dust is cutting in. And if you're going, perpendicularly, still going back and forth, same issue. So, you go only in one direction, it'll push the dust out of the way, and, it won't into the piece.
Hey, Editing Stokes here. I also wanted to mention that this tip in specific was given to me by the plomotherapist. This guy is amazing. I was banging my head against a wall, and I was just getting nowhere with sanding. I just couldn't figure out why there were still scratches. I don't remember how I found him, but I do remember he was super nice, so I sent him a message and we talked a bit, and he even video called me, which really surprised me. With, creators talking to their fans personally like that is always a very good sign in my eyes. So, he helped me out, gave me that tip of sanding in one direction, and, that's why I'm able to sand so well out of box. So, make sure you give him a follow, at Plomotherapist on Instagram, and on YouTube as well. So send him a message, tell him I said thank you, and that I sent you, and yeah.
And just make sure you're very gentle with it. You can see the way I do it. Very light. You don't have to, hit the piece. Just, this is back and forth. This is only in one direction. See, very light, very subtle. Takes a little bit of getting used to, but once you got the muscle memory and, 10 minutes of doing it, you'll be fine for life. And now on sanding method. Why I use that method. Let's start from the top. Wet sanding, it's a bitch to clean because the dust will kind of cement on there and it's impossible to get off. Circle sanding, I already talked about that, drilled it in. And perpendicular, same issue. I've heard some people say, oh, if you do it perpendicularly, it sands against the grain. Kind of. And I've also heard those same people say, oh, if you only sand in one direction, you're just sanding along the existing line. It doesn't really work like that. Humans are not machines that are tuned to the nanometer or atom even, right? So it doesn't really work like that. And that's about it. For the painting method, or sanding for painting, all you gotta do, 600, 1200, maybe gray balancer, you're fine for most paints. I use G paint, so, you can go to 1000, you'll be fine. Other paints, I'm not sure, but you don't have to be that level of neurotic with all the finish and the grid and da-da-da-da-da. Just as long as you get, most of the surface. And that's it. I think my real grade perfect strike actually is arriving now. And I gotta go to school. So, thank you all for watching. I hope you learned something. Discord in the description. I'm the Studio G community manager. We have nice community build events every week. As well as special events. And Twitch is in the description. I try to do my build. And that's all for me. Any questions, comments, concerns, or, heartfelt love letters you want to send my way, description or Discord. Have a good one.